It'll sound nickel and dime trivial, but I know that there are a few of you who will appreciate the sentiment regarding hardware. You see, I walk a great deal, sometimes from bus stop to bus stop if the bus is taking too long. And when I'm walking along and I happen to look down and see an incidental screw or nut or bolt or nail or what have you, invariably I will pick it up and put it in my pocket. Now that might seem like an odd thing to do, but it isn't if you have any kind of an appreciation for or knowledge of hardware and just how handy this stuff can be when you really need it, whether you're putting together a little project or whether you're building a house. And on top of that, whereas it is nickels and dimes, nuts and bolts, those nickels and dimes, they add up after a while. Hardware can get expensive. So when you're walking along and you see a nut or a bolt, a nail, a screw, a washer or what have you, some little whatchamacallit whatnot, if you're like me, and I think some of you are, you pick them up. And almost without variance, that stuff ends up out in ye old coffee can, usually tucked away in your garage, or in our case, down in the cellar. A raggedy old coffee can that in turn overflows into other containers of convenience. The stuff adds up, to be sure, but it's always there when you need it. Now, all of these nickel and dime nuts and bolts, they put me in mind of an instance from a few years ago. I was coming from I don't know where. All I know is that it was around the noon hour and that I had had a few. I think I was coming from a house show from the night before and I was, as it were, still going. Meaning I was walking down the street with a great big old smile on my face. I think you understand. Now, when I'm a little bit inebriated, anything that I say or do, my voice, my physicality, it all becomes demonstratively animated. And I can recall walking along, glancing down, and right alongside the curb, right at the edge of the sidewalk, there was a drywall screw. And I bent down and I plucked it up like a child finding a toy, holding it up in sheer delight. Now, a few paces away, ironically coming out of a liquor store, was this middle-aged couple, a great big grizzly bear of a guy and a somewhat shorter, petite woman. They could have been husband and wife, girlfriend and boyfriend, I don't know. But they were coming out and they were making their way down the street. And as I say, I had had a few. And when I've had a few, I will talk to anybody. And announcing to the world at large, including that couple, I said, as proud as can be, drywall screw. The couple stopped, they looked at each other, and they didn't have to do this. This is Portland after all. They could have been downright hateful. Instead, their response was basically, "Oh, great, good ground score." And they smiled and nodded and went along their way. And I smiled back, pleased as punch. Then, and as I say, he didn't have to do this. The great big grizzly bear, he turns around and he says, "And, you know, you probably saved someone from getting a flat tire. Good for you." And the lady nods and smiles, and they both walk away. And I tell you, especially in that frame of mind, that made my day. That was a couple. That was a couple that I believe truly appreciates nickel and dime, nuts and bolts, hardware.